Hi, this is Dr. Tim Green, and I have the privilege of being here with Dr. Chris Haskell, who is a clinical assistant professor at Boise State University in the Department of Educational Technology. Chris, thanks for taking the time out to let me interview you.
You bet. Thanks for having me here in this tiny little digital box.
Our topic today is quest-based learning, and you know, Chris does a lot of work with game-based learning, uh, education using virtual worlds, and even learning through online social networks. All that stuff is very, very interesting to me. But we're going to focus in on quest-based learning. And kind of before we do that, I like to know how people arrived at where they arrived. So if you don't mind talking about how you arrived at Boise State, I know you were a high school music teacher prior to coming here, but if you want to talk a little bit about that, then we'll jump into the first question, which is, what is quest-based learning?
You bet. Well, in order to complete my court-mandated community service, I taught for 8 years as a high school music teacher. No, I loved it. I was a music teacher for a long time, and absolutely loved it. I don't know that I could go back and do it again just because the schedule requirements are just crazy. But I taught in the state of Nevada, and had some pretty high-level programs, lots and lots of musicians. Which is like it's like being like a head coach and an athletic director all at the same time. I mean, it's nonstop. But so I came to the university to be the assistant director of our marching band here, and actually transitioned back into the department where I had gotten my master's, and just kind of stuck around, kept going to classes. Eventually, they say you can't take any more classes; you have to write a dissertation, and voila, here I am,
I,
tech nerd. Reformed musician.
I like that. I like that a lot. Well, thanks for that background.
Yeah.
So again, we're going to talk about quest-based learning. Let's start with probably the most basic question that we need to start with, and what is quest-based learning?
Oh, okay. So it's a form of game-based learning, right? I mean, and if we think about the context of game-based learning, a lot of people immediately jump to a place where they see 20 somethings or 30 somethings playing video games in their mom's basement, not moving on with their life, right? And so you'll ask somebody, so are you a gamer? Oh, no, 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 I'm not a gamer, But when we really break down our patterns of use and our experiences, we're actually all gamers of sort, whether it's addicted to Candy Crush, which, by the way, is a terrible addiction. Just don't start. Here in our town, there's a billboard that says Candy Crush, not even once. So, but that we all play these different kind of games, from Farmville to Tetris, to more serious MMOs. And I mean, we all have an experience with games. It may not be console, it may not be computer, but we certainly have our own games. As maybe the folks who are watching, listening, think about that, you're like, well, okay, yeah. So if we follow Pew, right, we're all like 98% of us are gamers in some way. We play some kind of game every week, digital game every week. So that hopefully breaks down a little bit of this barrier of this idea of game-based learning. We're not talking necessarily about using games to learn, although game-based learning could be that. We're also not talking necessarily about repurposing traditional games or off-the-shelf commercial games for learning, which also qualifies as game-based learning. What we typically do is we take the experience of learning and we make it more game-like. Some people call that gamification, and that's not wrong. It's just one of the ways it's described. But basically, it's quest-based learning. You ask a 25-cent question, and I give you a $2 answer. How's that? Basically, quest-based learning is taking the metrics of a traditional learning experience and making them more playful and more game-like. Right? Quest-based learning is choice. It's a branching structure in a curriculum rather than just here's what you do next, now do it. It's a reward system that supersedes, say, points. It's quest-based learning is using an experience point system rather than A's, B's, and C's, where you continue to accumulate points until you reach a winning condition. So we haven't tested this, which means it's sure to go wrong, but I'm going to try to do a quick screen share. Let me know when you can see that screen share. Anything?
We can see it.
Excellent. So, and hopefully this will pop up and can you see that still?
Yeah, you're popping up a Prezi that's
Oh
about
yeah.
ready to come up. It's not there
Okay.
yet.
Okay. Well, I'll leave it. I'll leave it in the in its kind of
There it is.
smaller state.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's coming up.
All right. Like I said, we're taxing the system. We're trying to see if we can break it, and I think we're going to succeed. So basically, quest-based learning works like this. In a traditional gradebook approach, right? You have different steps along the way. The learning log, the oral report, the assignment, right. These are all fixed stops on the path, and whether you are ready to get to that place or you're way far beyond that place and just have to wait for it to come, a gradebook approach really forces you into a fixed track that doesn't really bend for your particular needs. Now, there are some ways kind of around that with adaptive release and things that we do in online learning a little bit, but ultimately it's a fixed path and you're forced to go on it. It's basically, here's the experience I know you need, I want you to have, and I'm gonna hold you to it with everybody else around you. But a quest-based approach is a lot more game-like, right? Where you have branching architectures within the curriculum. You do this activity, and then these activities become available. You kind of lose interest in that for a little while. You move over to work on something else. And so quests themselves are just individual learning activities that you choose for yourself. I feel like doing this today, and instructional designers and teachers can basically make available what's meaningful to their students or what they believe is meaningful to their students in the curriculum, and allow them to play through that. So that's the the basis of quest-based learning. If I were going to give you a really nice, tight tweet version of same, quest-based learning is making class a game with experience points, badges, and achievements, choice, and a winning condition that is reachable by any student.
Excellent. I'm assuming we can view this if I
Yeah,
make that available.
you bet, you bet. I can hand that off to you.
Excellent. Thank you. Hey, so taking that whole idea, the concept of the quest-based learning, how have you used this first or seen it used in K-12, in the K-12 environment?
Oh, K-12. We're seeing it in K-20, and it works a lot like the classes that we teach at our university, where teachers kind of see, we built this system because we wanted to be able to do this, and we couldn't repurpose any other learning management systems to do what we want. We looked into Moodle. Could we create some Moodle plugins that would allow us to do game-like things within an environment? Just in defense of that real quick, there may be some folks who are out there who either feel this way or constantly feel they're defending this type of idea within their communities, right? That, well, yeah, that's great that you want to make school more game-like, but we've always done it this way, and students, need to take things seriously, not more playfully. Just a note on that. We as in education, the grand educational establishment, right, has always selected and used the most effective ideology and strategy and tool sets of the day, right? In the 1850s, we needed some way to organize and educate the largest percentage of our population in history. Before that, it was just a few wealthy landowners and privileged people, mostly white men. And after that, they were like, well, we need to do, educate all people, this compulsory education. So we borrowed from the most prevalent systems of the day, right? Industrialism. It's where factory rows come from in our classrooms. It's where ringing bells. It's where you have a teacher in the front distributing knowledge. You're constantly assessing whether that knowledge has been received, whether or not it has relevance or meaning, or it's what the learner wants. Those are all more recent considerations, but we used it, and schools didn't used to be integrated. They used to be segregated. And when society had a different tool for making society work, specifically integration. Didn't work in every place early, but the idea was, okay, well, let's bring that into schools and social harmony. We see all of these things that exist in society move into education about 20 to 30 years after they're introduced and become mainstream in society. That's kind of generational, right? Teachers teachers kind of teach the way that they were taught and modify just a little, so like slow to convert. Anyway, but I share that with you because this idea of a game-based approach is simply using some of the best tools and best ideology created by the information age, right? And so you'll see as I kind of show you the way that teachers are using our approaches and our systems, you'll see those things kind of flesh out in the way, you know, a curriculum is organized now. Things like social voting, things like aggregate scores and times, you know, sharing a lot of information, the ability to comment and in essence downvote a piece of curriculum. You know, if it's not a very fun or functional activity and students hate it, you know, they can ultimately downvote it and leave comments that the teacher and other students can use to either improve or maybe change the experience. How back to your question again? Here we go. 25-cent question, $2 answer. The way teachers are using it, they're taking their existing curriculum, placing it in some kind of organization. Sometimes it's linear, but most of the time it offers multiple choices each day. You know, what do you feel like doing today? And plugging it into a system, attaching some awards and badges to organize student achievement, not necessarily to motivate, but and allowing their students to play through the curriculum. What do you want to work on today? Or today we're all doing this, you know, quest, this raid, if you will, to borrow from kind of game vernacular. We're all going to slay this dragon, so to speak, together today. And then, you know, you can work on your individual questing outside. So they're using it by bringing in their traditional curriculum and then continuing to supplement and build more and more and more.
So tell us what we're looking at right now.
Oh yeah. So we built a system ourselves at the university because there wasn't one. We used a little bit of department money. We laid out what we thought we wanted and created a basically a learning management system, game-based learning management system that offers students the ability to choose from quests that they're interested in. You can see kind of by looking at this, I don't know how clear it is for those watching, but you have individual quests. These are all different activities, learning activities that you can select from that you can click on and they expand. You find out more, a short description. Are there any prerequisites to this? They're all tagged so you can actually search things. If I feel like watching a video today, I just don't want to actually have to get up out of my seat. That's just kind of where my head's at. I can search and pull up all the quests that contain video, right? You can click on it to start it. I'm in the teacher side right now, and a quest is just a self-contained learning activity that's tagged to competencies, standards, or categories within a class. So this is the back to the future. We want our pre-service teacher candidates to learn about how what we thought education, say, might have been in our time, but predicted in 1985. Hence the hairstyles and the colors and the computers that we thought. So this is just a trio of videos that we want these students to watch embedded in a quest. And so they watch those videos and then they produce the deliverable here, which is to what they need to do to turn it in to get credit for this quest, right? And then they submit that activity and move on. It's worth 25 points. It takes an average of 25 minutes, and that's determined by the students. And it's averaging over 4 out of 5 stars, so it's fairly popular, you know, among students.
Where do they turn that in, Chris? Or so with
digitally.
This quest?
Yeah, digitally. So
Okay.
this one, I think this one asks for a blog post, but
Okay.
they could easily just submit it in just a text box as part of the submission process.
And then
I can show you that.
And then as the instructor would go into this system and give them
Yep.
feedback through that?
Yeah, so here's an example. So this student has submitted this quest, and this is a real student who submitted this one day ago. And this is what they've done. Again, it shows me the teacher. So what was it that they were expected to do on this? And here's the link to their activity. I can click it, go visit their portfolio where they're hosting this. I can click on the object. It's asking me to download it. I won't do it here. And I can inspect that, make sure that it meets all the qualifications. And then here's the really interesting thing. And you and I are both teachers, and we'll kind of talk about this piece of it in just a second. But right, you really have two options, and this was a controversial thing in the very beginning because there's no B minus. There was no, well, I'm going to give you 85 points out of 100. It's this idea of mastery, right? Either they met the expectations, or they're in the process of meeting the expectations for this activity. One of the great things we do when we offer students choice and we remove things like due dates is that we're free to hold them to higher and higher standards, right? Because there's no benefit to them submitting something that's not ready. So in a traditional class, if there's no penalty for due dates, for missing a due date, then I'm just going to turn in, or I could turn in something crappy that you then send back to me and say, oh, okay, fix these things. And then there's no time penalty there. But if you remove those things, someone can submit something and I can return it and say, oh, this is so close, but fix these three things. And they can submit it again. And you're almost there. I can now just fix this one, these three things. There's some spelling errors here. Or run the spell check using this app, and you'll find all the mistakes that I did, right? Or have this peer reviewed by somebody. It's really close, right? You can continue to push them to higher and higher levels of success. And then when they meet that requirement, you can approve it, and you can even add a few more points to it by way of an award that they would get it, kind of an award and achievement, kind of badging kind of stuff, to increase the value of it. You submit something to me, and it totally blows away the expectations that we had, right? The bar was here, and you flew past it. So you're going to get full credit, and you're going to get a little bit of a bonus, right? Because I appreciate your work. And then we simply submit it, and the student gets all of those things. If I return it, it goes right back into the student's in progress activities, and they have some feedback that they need to address before they can get credit for it. It's a true, I guess, mastery approach. So what you're looking at is a real class with real students, and here's an example of one, right? This student submitted this activity. I said, this is great. It just needs a couple of fixes to be ready for discerning eyes. Please see the attached Grammarly report. I used a tool called Grammarly and ran a Grammarly report. And then I gave it back to this student, and then they fixed it and resubmitted it. Mastery. It's really nice to be able to hold students to that higher standard without penalty, right? In a supportive, I guess way.
So I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So how does this go over in the traditional system where we have the letter grades? How does this all? I mean, I guess I have more than one question. How does it go over this kind of the idea of mastery, and how does that mastery then translate? And I hate to ask the question, but I know someone's wanting to know this. How does that translate into the traditional letter grades that we need to give our students?
That's a good question. So let me see if I understand this correctly, and I'll answer these in short form this time. How does their experience translate to a letter grade?
Yes.
Because my institution still gives letter grades.
Right.
It's not a pass-fail class, and our users do the same thing. And the second question is, how does that play among the community?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So, right. I mean, and the second question first, how do I know if I'm winning? Who are the winners, right? Who are the best? And I struggle with this one because I'm a big believer that our role as educators is not to sort, but rather give every student the same opportunity to be successful, even if that definition of success looks a little different, right? And so there are often debates at my institution and, among the institutions that we have teachers beta testing this approach about, well, yeah, that's great, but who are your best students? Um, and what's funny is that, well, with the exception of maybe when you and I went to school, we don't see many curves anymore. Classes graded on the curve, but that used to be a thing where you'd go in and it was the understanding that this was a competitive experience, right? That only the highest achieving or those who could win would have the high grades, and everybody else would disperse across that curve, right? Did you ever take a class like that in college?
More than I'd like to admit.
Yeah. I think universally, with the exception of a few very competitive industries where that may be a valuable, I guess, methodology, most of us have the mandate that our job is to teach every student the curriculum in front of us in the best way for them, right? And including, this push we've had for the last 20 years about truly differentiated instruction, that students come in basically with suitcases of different experience and knowledge. And our job is to give them our experience without penalizing them for what they carried in with them, right?
Right.
Our goal is to get them all to the high bar. That doesn't always happen because some students simply fail to attend or participate. But it also doesn't happen because we have systems that arbitrarily punish them for things that are not truly related to the curriculum. It's that broader concept of responsibility training. And our K-12 teachers see that a ton, right? Well, if I let you turn this in late, then what am I teaching you? Often we're teaching them that there are arbitrary rules associated with academic gains, and that there is a hidden or at least a veiled game associated with the curriculum of English or mathematics, right? That there's this extra curriculum and it's not well defined, it's often veiled, and it's not consistent across students and it's not consistent across classes. So, by definition, most of the parents, if you think about it that way, would really shake their fist and say, well, why is my child, being subject to this, but others aren't? Anyway, I digress. So there's lots of debate. There's lots of debate about what it means to give a student an A, and what does an A mean, and this idea of grade inflation. 93% of our students who take courses using this approach reach the winning condition, which is the equivalent of the A prior to our switching to a quest-based approach. So from 71% of students being successful in the course, A's, B's, and C's, we see 93% reaching the A, partly because there's no arbitrary punishment for the order or time in which they complete things, and also because we don't accept the first and sometimes worst iteration of their work. We push them to learn the other things that they may have missed, or may have chosen not to address in the first thing. So think about this in terms of, when we talk about this mastery approach, think about it in terms of working on the farm with Grandpa, right? Grandpa wants us to learn the meaning of work, right? He's going to teach us responsibility training. All right, now you go out and slop the hogs. And okay, I know nothing about slopping the hogs, so this may fall flat. This analogy may fall flat to some of the listeners who are like, no, you don't do that way. Anyway, and you go out and you do the job incorrectly. And I don't know what it means to do the job incorrectly, but you do it incorrectly and you come back to Grandpa, right? It's not that you get like 70% of your dinner plate. Grandpa sends you back out to do it again. And if you come back and you've still done it wrong, nope. Here's what, and maybe it's scaffolded a little bit more. I'm going to watch you do this now. Now take the time and do it this way, right? And when you learn that, you advance from that principle, right? You use that concept moving forward, and you've learned from that experience by not being allowed to do it wrong and just be penalized, right? Because pretty quickly, we as humans, our students included, learn what it really takes to get out of it what we want. Not necessarily what the experience was designed to give or what it needs to provide, but rather what do we have to do to get the grade, if you will, that we want. And for some students, a D is good enough. A D is a success. A D means you don't have to take it again. For some students, an A is success, right? And there's a sliding scale in between. But we design curriculum with one goal in mind, and we find we settle, settle, settle. So this is a prominent debate on all campuses everywhere. How do we hold students to high standards? And how do we ensure that they're learning the things that we want them to do? Now, to your other question, which should be easier to answer on how do we issue letter grades, the way we teach the quest-based approach and the way we utilize the quest-based approach is to give basically a series of ranks, and students, as they rank up from 0 to 99 points and explore, you see all these names and pieces here, all the way up to 2,000. These are the rank names, and these are the points. Now, different grade points become available at different times for them, and different curriculum becomes available as they level up. There are advantages to that. But ultimately, if you get to 2,000 points and the other required things, a completed and submitted portfolio and 3 badges of your choice within a curriculum, that's an A. If you do 1,850, well, that's a B. If you do 1,700, well, that's a C. If you do, 1,600, that's a D. I forget exactly, but it's basically given to them. Those are your points. Anything below, the equivalent 60% is an F, right? 60% of the goal points. And they can go beyond that and do, but they can stop at whatever point they want. Submit that finished portfolio. It probably wouldn't surprise you that when the winning condition, the A, is always within reach, students are always doing more. In 4 years, we've taught, gosh, I have to look at the exact number. I think it's like 28. No, sorry. It's 1,200 students using this approach in just one series of test classes, right? 1,200 students. 93% are getting A's. We've only given 2 B's. I think actually we may have given a 3rd B this last semester. Self-selected B. No C's, no D's. F's for the students who really stopped showing up, and everyone else was able to climb through that position regardless of the number of times they made mistakes to that A level. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, it does. That's quite impressive.
Well, and I think largely it comes from this principle that that we're not allowing traditional, I guess, industrial paradigm punishments to affect the final outcome. Like a video game, we make failure a learning opportunity. We can circle back on it. If you miss your triple jump in Mario 3 and you don't have your wings and carry yourself over to that, you go back and you practice that again until you develop that skill. And like it in this class, or whether it's in science, if you still don't know the different pieces of the microscope, you go back and you revisit it. Okay, you're almost there, but you're missing these 2. Find a nice mnemonic device to help you remember what they're called, right? And memorization is a bad example, but hopefully this makes sense. We send a student back to interact with that. Oh, very close. You came up with a very good answer, but there's one mistake near the end that actually gives you the wrong answer. See if you can figure out what that is, right? We let them fail and learn from their failure. And often students who are less motivated, and some of your folks may be listening, I can feel that there are some people nodding saying yes, that people who, students who don't put in the effort, right, who just expect to be punished, very quickly learn that they don't get that normal reinforcement for failure, which they've come to accept. They don't care, right? I know that your class doesn't mean, to me what you think it means. But when we create new feedback loops of, oh, this is great, but just a little bit more, then they develop confidence and they develop an understanding in a new system that actually allows them to be more successful than they would have been if we had tried to teach them responsibility with a B minus.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea. It is. I like that. I kind of have a related question to all of this.
Yeah.
You use this in your program. It's completely online. That's correct, isn't it?
No. No, I teach a majority of face-to-face
Oh,
classes.
okay. So the interactions that you have, uh, and correct me if I'm wrong, as I'm understanding the quest based, the learning that you have, the different things that they can go and do. When is the interact? How do the students, if they're at different on different quests and doing different things, how do you have them engage with each other when they're at different points? Maybe
What does a class look like when it's face-to-face, but they're doing different things?
that's a better way of putting it.
Excellent.
Yes.
It is a um, it's a really cool kind of environment. Sorry, I apologize to people watching and I'm just bouncing around trying to figure out what in the world I'm showing them. Just ignore me. Um, it is very similar to big MMO gameplay, right? There are opportunities for you to just work on your own. So about 25% of the class is what I would kind of consider just open lab, right? Work on whatever you want. Science teachers do this, English teachers do this, where there's a percentage of their time in their schedule that's just okay. Work on the thing you're working on. I'm going to give you time to work on it, and I'm going to circulate and assist. Or I'm going to spot people that have problems and pair them with people who may have solved this problem, right? Put them in kind of peer pairs. You can do a lot of that kind of, I don't want to say helicopter teaching, but where you are hovering and going, oh, let me combine this, or oh, let me fix this for you real quick. But really, it's just highly productive. In my class, we've got Spotify on, we're playing music. 25% of it is really just work on what you want to work on. Another, I'd say 25 to 30% of the time is spent in what I would describe as raids. These are activities that I have planned for you. And all teachers have these. These are your money lessons, right? You can't wait to teach these every semester because they are just the ones you just love, right? Whether they've got the funny, things that you do or the costume, whatever it is, right? We've all got them. Those again in video game vernacular would be raids. We're all coming together to slay one dragon together. And that can include multiple projects that jigsaw into one bigger thing. I'm going to have this table work on this and this table work on this. We're all going to bring them together, right? We did that in my class this week where they researched a different social software tool and then did an Ignite presentation as a group on it, right? And so it was a raid. Another 25% of the time is in like assigned small group projects. Okay, I've got 4 things going on today. You pick the table of the thing that's most interesting to you, right? Kind of a pick a quest. But I'm mandating what's happening, and it's between these choices because it might be thematic. It might be related to a bigger topic that we want to discuss and kind of unpack. I want to give them an experience where they can interact with this topic with their peers in a more structured way. And so and the remaining time is where I may find or it's a combination of open questing and like a small group party, a little raid where I say, you know what, I want to get you and you and you. I noticed that you all selected this quest, but you haven't done it yet. So let's get this group together and you guys can collaborate together to create this, and I will be your human resource. I'll pop in and out a lot and help you kind of do this. And here's a couple extra resources that might make this a little bit easier. So to recap, 25% just open questing, work on what you want, 25-30% raids, about 20% like focused group activities that I pick for you, and then finally the remainder a combination of work on what you want, but I'm going to grab a few people and really help you keep moving.
That's perfect. Good. Thanks for explaining that. So, do you see that translating in a similar way when the course is online?
You have to facilitate those differently, but yes, you can. If it's purely an asynchronous class, it gets a little bit harder, and you have to use clever asynchronous tools like voice threads and other kind of stationary but fluid objects. Whether it be a small virtual world space where they go in and do their piece. For example, I teach a class that are online that have synchronous sessions, say in Minecraft, and we'll go on our University of Minecraft server, and their job will be to build out a component, right? And so they can do it whenever they want, but they're really doing it as part of a selected activity for that week.
Excellent.
Yeah.
It sounds pretty cool. So, we could talk all day on this. But I'm going to wrap it up just because
Okay.
I want to value your time here. But the last question I always end with all my interviews it's advice. So, for educators, instructional designers, or educational technologists who are interested in quest-based learning, what advice do you have for them? In general, maybe to get started, or just in general, what advice do you have?
Well, I mean, when you think about quest-based learning, it's basically built on choice, right? That students have choice within a curriculum. Now, it may not be completely open world choice. Come into my English class and do whatever you want. Just spend all day on Facebook. That's okay. That's not what we're talking about. You're choosing between a number of different activities that have a different method of interaction. Some are to read, some are to watch, some are to just go and do. Some are to socialize. And when students have the opportunity to choose within a curriculum, and for that to have value, there is tremendous buy-in, right? All students enter a class with that question: what do I need to do to get out of this what I want? And it's a game to them already, right? It's just a game with really poorly written rules that are arbitrary, rules that favor those that have supportive, usually adult networks around them and at home, and hurts those who don't have those, I guess, human structures. So it's already a game, and there are just some students who have a leg up already. So my advice is, if teachers want to create a game-based classroom, right, or a classroom that ultimately leads to the success of their students, whether or not you want to put a game-based or gamification moniker on that, it begins with choice. It begins with giving students meaningful choices. And the second piece of advice that I have is find ways to remove arbitrary restrictions, right? Arbitrary penalties and punishments. Look for ways to hold them to higher standards without punishing them for their first draft. I think if any of us wanted to learn, say, cooking, and we went into, I forget his name, Hell's Kitchen, Gordon Ramsay, there you go, into his kitchen, and we received the punishment that they received for making mistakes, we would quickly try to get out of that environment. That would not be conducive to our learning. Now, it might be conducive to our attention at first, but ultimately, those are really painful lessons to learn. It's another thing entirely to say, these aren't good yet, but here's what you did right. Now fix these two things and come back and to give that opportunity for success. I think good classrooms for our 21st century learners include choice and include removal of punishments that ultimately stand in conflict with our prime directive, which is to connect them with the curriculum and to get them to what we would consider an acceptable point of knowledge, understanding, skill, and disposition.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that advice. Again, thanks, Chris, for allowing me to interview you and taking out your valuable time. I appreciate it.
You bet. This has been geeky, nerdy, fun.
And all of those things are great.
Awesome.
Thanks.
You bet.